Unity across the universe. All you need is love, love. Love is all you need. These are John Lennon's famous words from the chorus of the song All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. I think it's safe to say that everyone in this room has heard of them. In a way, we are united by this shared experience. After all, the Beatles have been dubbed many times as the most successful band of all time. Now, even though their first album, Please Please Me, turned 62 years old this past March, their music continues to inspire young and old alike. While researching for my speech, I came across thousands of articles, web pages, and opinion blogs. And I think I can summarize my findings in Kaylee Ramirez's words from her article, The Beatles Are Overrated, for the Heights magazine. She states that the world is made up of two types of people, those who worship the Beatles and those who don't. Now, unlike Kaylee, I'm from the former, but guess what? I believe I have more people on my side. According to Russell Heinrich, an analyst for the Pew Research Center, although there is a generational gap in America, one area in culture that is helping bridge that gap is music, but more specifically, the Beatles. He quotes that those ages 16 to 25 are just as likely to be fans of the Fab Four than those ages 65 and older. As you can see, they are far from forgotten. They didn't just mark a generation and then disappear completely. No. The music of the Beatles transcends time. First, bringing people together. Then, mobilizing millions with their anti-war messages. And finally, fostering love across generations until today. The Beatles came together as a group in 1962 and leapt to fame at once. There was a certain energy that they carried, which couldn't be found anywhere else. Moreover, they rose to fame at a time in which political turmoil was the norm and many people lived in uncertainty and confusion. Let's not forget that the Beatles shared the world stage with Kennedy's assassination, the first years of the Berlin Wall, and the peak of the Vietnam War. It was during these uncertain times that Paul McCartney met Bertrand Russell, a renowned philosopher, mathematician, and recipient of the 1950 Literature Nobel Prize. Yes, a very busy man. Russell was the public face of opposition to conflict in Vietnam. During their conversation, he clearly transmitted his moral objections to war, and McCartney, according to Liverpool University Press, was so deeply moved by his insights, he immediately shared them with his fellow Beatles, especially John Lennon. This sparked a shift in their awareness and prompted them to adopt a more outspoken anti-war stance in their creative projects and public statements. Perhaps it is this encounter that propelled the Beatles into becoming cultural icons, dedicated to spreading the message of peace and love. In 1967, they released the single All You Need Is Love, which at its core, you might say, is a simple song, with simple lyrics and an even simpler message, love. However, if you think about it, isn't love what binds us all? Unity, peace, freedom, and harmony all come from it. It's no surprise that the ongoing hippie movement of that time chose to embrace them as the voice of the youth. The Beatles used their music as a tool to spread the universal message of love, hope, and togetherness. It gave people a sense of belonging and reassurance that despite political divisions or personal struggles, love and peace could unite humanity. And let me stop here. Look at the world around you, read the headlines. Isn't this exactly what we need today? But there is hope. Paul McCartney's 2024 Got Back tour has been a wonderful opportunity to see generations unite. I was very lucky to be invited by my parents, and let me tell you, it was freezing. However, my eyes were drawn to the sight of grandparents sitting next to their grandchildren, all singing along. That, I believe, is a true testament to the endurance of the Beatles' message. When I started my speech singing, the song probably rang a bell somewhere. Now, luckily for everyone, I won't be singing anymore, but I bet that I could sing at least 10 Beatles songs and they would all have the same effect. 60 years later, they are still relevant. If you think about any artist who is trending right now, say Marcia Nepe, he probably won't be remembered 2 decades from now. I'm sorry if he has fans here. Sure, maybe he has millions of streams on Spotify, but at the end of the day, the people that are remembered are those whose message is able to perdure in time. And that is my message for you today. Don't underestimate the power of music. It can transform the world and break barriers, just like the Beatles did with their lyrics. In this world, all we need is love. Thank you.
Thank you very much for beautiful memories about the Beatles as well. What is the impact that you see in, you have mentioned now Marcia, so I have to ask, any impact that you see that music can have in unity for young people like you?
Yes. I spoke about this in the morning a bit. I was asked if there was any band nowadays that had any kind of resemblance to not only the Beatles but the legacy that they had. And what I answered was Coldplay. Coldplay checks all the boxes. I mean, they're British, all their shows, they're British. First box ticked. But I don't know if you have had the luck to go to one of their concerts. I was very lucky and I went with all my family, and I can assure you that, well, first, it's a very family-friendly show. It's very cozy. The lyrics that they sing are very profound. Not all of them are happy, of course. Neither were the Beatles ones, but the lyrics are very profound. The concerts are very touching, very familiar, and a bonus that the Beatles didn't have, so this is a new box, is that they're very sustainable. In their concerts, they have a very good practice in which when you're just arriving to the stadium, they give you a bracelet, which is biodegradable, which I don't know what I don't know if I translated it right, but if I did it, it's a bracelet that if it gets to the ground, then you don't contaminate. So you can participate in this concert. It is interactive, and you are at the same time contributing to stopping climate change. So I think that today the Coldplay has assumed the legacy that the Beatles have left, and they continue to open it more and make it more accessible to everyone. Since, well, when the Beatles had their music, Spotify didn't exist, YouTube didn't exist, so their music had a reach that isn't comparable to the reach that Coldplay has today. So I think Coldplay has assumed the role that the Beatles left when they separated.
Thank you. That was a very interesting speech. And in the answer you just gave, you answered the question that I was going to ask. So I have to shift to a different question. But you also said something interesting about Spotify and YouTube and the accessibility to music that exists today, which did not exist at the time of the Beatles. I wonder if you believe that this access that everyone has to music now makes it easier or more difficult for music to unite people.
I think that is a very good question. Mainly because since access to music is much more easy nowadays compared to the 60s, you have, well, for starters, you have I don't want to invent a number, but much more people doing music. So at the same time, while you have these platforms that make music more accessible and you get your message much more across than 60 years earlier, you also, since you have that much people making music at the same time, it's easy for your message to get lost, because that's kind of how artists work nowadays, that you find your people that fit a very specific kind of people, kind of mentality and personality, and you stay there and you're comfortable there. That's why what the Beatles did was so amazing. They were able to get past that and have a whole public that was willing to hear their message and put it in practice. So I think that, answering your question, now in Spotify and YouTube, I think it is a little bit harder to get your message across in such a way like the Beatles did in their time, but it's not impossible. And I'm sorry to fall back again to what I said earlier, but I think Coldplay are doing a really good job at trying. We'll see, time will say if they have been doing it right or wrong, but yeah, I think it's a little bit harder, but not impossible.
Thank you, Blanca. And I have the privilege of asking the last questions when my fellow judges have already asked the sensible ones. So with your link with music and unity, you mentioned that in your previous response about people having more access to music. How can we encourage more people to actually play music and learn music?
I think, well, that's also a very good question, but I think that this all starts from funding music in general. Music, even though we all hear music, and well, yeah, we all hear music, we all have artists that we love and we listen to them regularly, but music itself isn't like not a workplace, but a job that many people would like to have. They have this stereotype of being a very hard, not a career hard to study, but after you get your degree, a very hard place for you to have money and make a name for yourself instead of being an artist part of the bunch. So I think that for getting more people to actually listen to music, it should start with more funding. Funding for music inside schools, having more instruments, more music teachers. I think that's like the base of the problem. If you go to music in whatever regular school you can think of in Chile or in any other country, usually they have like 2 or 3 guitars, probably one of them has like 2 strings left because the others are broken. The teachers probably, it wasn't their first choice of career and they ended up there because life said that they had to end up there. So I think that with funding and with having better musical representation in school, you'll have kids growing up in an environment of music, and this stimulates them more to start listening to more music and also different music. So that's where you tackle what I said earlier about artists having a very specific type of people listening to their music. You get kids stimulated and trying to understand what they are listening and putting like filters. So then they don't absorb everything that they listen and they start understanding what they hear. So yeah, I think through funding and bettering music as a subject in schools, I think you can motivate people to start listening to more songs and actually getting and receiving the message that music contains.